rage baiters. You could also call them rage merchants. This is an unfortunate phenomenon that I think has taken over the internet for the last, well, essentially 10 years, especially with politics and mainstream content, right? You have new age or modern film and video game critics and political commentators, right? They just thrive on triggering their audience to the extent that they can't help but engage. Throw them super chats, you name it. They want to constantly basically trigger their audience into a reaction, whether it's annoyance, being pissed off, you name it, disgust. And they just keep applying the same buzzwords and thumbnails over and over and over again. Right? There's not a lot of creativity behind what they do. They just know the trigger points essentially to their audience, what's going to get them to watch, what's going to get them to engage, and they get those sweet rage bucks from it. And that's one thing you'll notice, obviously, with Twitter or X, that that's really brought them to life, right? Because now people can get paid for tweeting, for getting engagement. And so you have folks constantly rage baiting, trying to get engagement, a lot of times spreading propaganda, lies, or simply just tickling the taint of Elon and others constantly just so that they can get those retweets or somehow get the clout on the internet. And obviously in the indie space, right, we're seeing it in comics and we're seeing it in film, especially in TV, anything tied to Disney, Star Wars, MCU, right? You've heard all the clickbait phrases and whatnot. And there's it's one thing to have a bit of a balance. And I've talked about this in the past where you can have a balance where you complain about some things that you've seen that you don't like, hopefully go into some detail about why and how it could be done differently. Give examples of movies that have done it properly. Um, Give examples of things that exist currently, whether it's in the mainstream or indie, that is countering what you claim is garbage, right? Is slop, is whatever buzzword you want to use. But you'll notice they don't really do that much. It's pretty much 75%, even 90, 95 plus percent just complaining, just baiting folks into having a reaction, getting annoyed, getting mad, and complaining about Disney, complaining about DC, complaining about Marvel, Star Wars, you name it. And then you'll get all these stupid thumbnails like they hate us, they want us dead, MCU, make it make it female, blah blah blah. But very few of them are willing to actually create something, right? If they're actual experts in storytelling or critiquing films, right, they should know the tweaks and changes that need to be made or the guidelines that should be followed in order to produce what they claim that they want. Yeah, Eric says, yeah, they can't stand this. They can't stand us. Oh gosh. Um, but for some reason, you don't really see them creating anything monumental, anything that actually stands out to counter what they claim is garbage. You'll see some people make attempts, but in a lot of cases, they do exactly what they say the mainstream is doing in a negative manner, right? We've seen creators where they're constantly like, oh, they're just constantly doing girl bosses, feminine leads. They're just turning everything gay and this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, all of their books are primarily a female lead and feminine. I wonder why. It's because you're just trying to chase sales. Hmm. If you actually stood by your message and your complaints that much, like wouldn't you have a strong male lead, bring traditionalism into the story and all that? But for some reason, you're actually doing what you criticize that the mainstream is doing. So that's very ironic when that happens. And you see it a lot. They'll say, oh, the storytelling is horrible, the art is horrible, cinematography is horrible. And then when they create their indie version of it, it's just as bad, if not much worse. They're not willing to invest in top notch artists, editors, you name it, in order to do it better. But they'll still get sales from the rage baiting because all they'll do is, yeah, look at how shitty they're doing it, but look at my books instead. and they'll get sales as a result of it. But those books, they don't end up breaking out being anything monstrous in the market, right? And the thing too is, I highly doubt most of them actually want change to happen, even when it comes to politics, right? Because if things were to change and they were to suddenly have this utopia where everything was conservative, for example, or every Disney movie was phenomenal, Star Wars returned to its original glory, right? There was no MCU, it was M M he or whatever, right? How would they make those rage books? They wouldn't be able to. I think this environment is actually preferable to a lot of them because it's how they've made their careers, and I mean, they're cashing in on the rage. But I would love to see that scenario, right, where it's like they get everything they want, or they claim that they want, right, that they say, and then suddenly the clicks drop off, and I mean, they would have to just talk about how awesome everything is, but suddenly the money is not there. That would be very interesting to see. I'm sure it will never happen, obviously, with the creative direction that a lot of these companies are going. But obviously, they found their sweet spot. They know exactly what to say, how to say it. But what's really unfortunate is just how gullible the general audience can be. And what's really I noticed that's the most sad is that more and more people are unable to think for themselves. So, for example, movies. Traditionally, right, you would just see that, oh, a movie's going to be releasing. I'm going to check out the trailer. You would watch the trailer and make a judgment off of that trailer. And then you would be like, oh, I think that might be worth my time. I'll go check it out or I won't. Right. What you're seeing now is that folks are not even willing to watch the trailer before getting all this commentary from all the rage baiters. And they will actually make their decision based off of that rage bait. Are you kidding me? And then they'll applaud said rage baiter, rage merchant, when they are at the theater funding the very companies and the very movies that they claim are garbage, laughing about it. Yeah, I just paid for tickets and gave them, $20. Ha ha ha. The movie was so bad. Yet you're there watching it. Like, how embarrassing is that? But they're not embarrassed because they're getting that money. And there are a lot of really good movies that have been overlooked because of that. Movies that are doing what those rage baiters claim they want, right? Great storytelling, great cinematography, CGI, and all that. And so they're purposely missing out on it because they're relying on these folks' commentary versus just making a decision based on their own interests and what is actually in front of their own eyes with the trailer. Great examples would be the latest Planet of the Apes, Furiosa, right? Everybody gave so much shit and complained so much about Furiosa. Why? Because it had a female lead, but it had the same quality and great storytelling that Mad Max Fury Road had. And really, even though it was technically a female lead, the focus wasn't just solely on her, and it wasn't like a girl boss, right? It was telling an origin story of one of the main characters that really ties in the origin of the entire universe in and of itself. It was a great movie, and a lot of people ended up being pissed off because they're like, all these people pissed on this movie, made it all political and all that, claimed that the film studio was being woke and blah blah blah, right? When in fact it was just a great story that happened to be based around one of the female characters. There are plenty of great stories throughout time that had a female lead. It's whether or not they told the story properly, right? Whether or not they did the story justice. There's a difference between, having a female lead and having a girl boss or a Mary Sue, etc. Furiosa's not a girl boss or a Mary Sue by any stretch of the imagination. And so, as a result of that, there are a lot of fantastic films that don't raise the money or don't get the sales that they should have. And as a result, you're going to end up in the long term getting less of those films. which counters what these folks claim that they're fighting for or doing their content for. I mean, even Oppenheimer, I remember folks complaining about that, and that was an absolute masterpiece, just like every Nolan film. But they found things to complain about versus like, hey, you have some really, really good movies. Well, actually, what you should probably do is save your commentary until you've actually seen it. Unless the trailer, right, like The Flash, for example, the trailer was horrible. The CGI looked horrible. It looked goofy as hell. I could understand why you would make commentary on that, but still, I would say, like, hey, let folks check it out, make their own assessment. But the thing is, they're jumping the gun on everything now, and they're so hyper focused on anything that looks potentially bad that they just use that as an avenue to just get that engagement instead of waiting until they've actually seen it, made a make a proper assessment or analysis, and then provide that to the audience. But maybe let the audience see it first, and then when you give your commentary, right? Then those folks will actually be able to relate to it because they've actually seen it. And then they'll be able to give an informed decision on if what you said is bullshit or not. But right now, the folks are not even able to cut through the bullshit because they're not actually seeing the content to see if what they're saying is right or not. They are just becoming basically drones. They're like, but they said it's garbage. Ha ha ha. So I'm not going to see it. In a lot of cases, they miss out on great movies. And then those movies don't raise as much money as they should, or they don't get as high of sales as they should, which means the studio is less likely to make more of those films. So you have to ask yourselves, are they purposely shooting themselves in the foot, or is there an agenda behind it? Why they're doing such content? And the other thing is, it's creating this plethora of clones. You're seeing all of these small YouTubers pop up that are just trying to duplicate exactly what these popular YouTubers are doing. So, well, minus the editing skills, the team, and wittiness and whatnot. And so you're just seeing all these people copycatting at every level what these folks are doing, which just spreads this disease, right? This just brain rot approach towards film, towards content. And you're just seeing more and more people spread this mindset to where folks are not they're not making proper assessments of trailers and all of that and just finding out from themselves if it's good. The other thing too is, okay, you want to shit on Star Wars and all of that. I'll give you that. Star Wars has not been good for a long time for the most part. Star Trek and all that. What about the films that are fantastic? Why aren't you dedicating, for that time period when that film is about to come out, when it comes out after, why not do some extensive streams or videos about that to try to make sure as many people see that as possible, right? Wouldn't you want that to make as much money as possible so that you can basically that's your message or your signal to those studios? I want more of that. Give me more of that, right? Do reviews, leave reviews on all those sites, right? Send them a message that this is what I want. So again, films like Oppenheimer, for example, they should have, in my opinion, pushing that like hell. That movie should have made 1.5 billion. It was that good. But and wouldn't you want your massive audience to actually be entertained, right? Wouldn't you want them to get that enjoyment? You should be sharing that feedback. You should be pushing them to get in those seats so that those movies get as much sales as possible so you can have more of it, right? Have some balance between showing your audience and proving to them of what is bad in the mainstream, but on the flip side, show them what is good and why and push them to consume it so that you can get more of it. And that's why I'm trying to have a balanced approach in terms of when I do videos, when I'm doing streams, I want to give recommendations to people so that they can just have enjoyment. I love when you stumble upon, even if it's a very old show or movie, gives you a movie night with the family or the wife, gives you something to step away from how shitty the world is or how shitty the world can be. But so many people are in this spin cycle of just being pissed about what's in showing out in the films, what's showing out in comics, in politics. And it's because there are so many rage baiters all over on every topic, just winding people up. And on top of that, what's happening is the discourse on Twitter, on social media becomes vile because people just do knee jerk reactions, start calling people names, just going nuts over sometimes just a basic opinion because they're so wound up and just hating or what could be perceived as hate, um, all this content versus just having basic conversations talking about what you do or don't like about these films. People just go to hyperbole and this is garbage, this is that. Can't have basic conversations. And it's just, again, it's winding everyone up and it's creating all these clone creators. And, can you imagine if it was like this back in the 80s and 90s when there was so much great entertainment? If, all the movies that we in music and shows that we love now that got to continue, they got season after season, new show after new show, etc. What if the folks like this would have existed back then? What if the internet existed? They may not have got the viewership they did. They may not have gotten the sales they did, and we may not have all this phenomenal content that we have today. And yeah, like Erica's saying, yeah, we had Siskel and Ebert, right? That would give honest, detailed feedback about movies that in a lot of cases would bring more people into seats because they would highlight stuff that they would love. And we need more of that versus what we are getting today. And yeah, I mean, politics is the perfect example of all these folks. And you're seeing a lot of folks that are essentially wearing costumes online, right? You have um, liberals acting as if they're conservatives and baiting people into conservative talking points, conservative, um, I don't know, clickbait and all of that. When in reality, they're actually liberals, right? They've found that sweet spot to rile people up, get that engagement, get paid on Twitter, get paid via YouTube, and all of that. And a lot of times, they're a bleeding heart liberal, and people will find out 5, 10 years later, and then those people that worship them, they end up feeling like idiots. Because yeah, a lot of these folks are hypocrites. They don't actually believe in their message. They don't actually believe in changing the culture, improving things. And that's why I hate the phrase culture warrior and all of that because a lot of them are opportunists. They know what they're doing. If they actually wanted to change culture, right, they would be trying to, oh, they'd be talking about topics, pushing for legislation and things like that that would prevent kids from being exposed to things that they should not be exposed to, for example, right? Changing the things that are being taught in school, getting back to traditionalism, um, pushing for traditional content, traditional heroes, things of that nature. But you don't really see them fighting for that. If they do, a lot of times it's in a joking manner and they're pushing some, BS stuff about, how, Superman is he was a conservative, he was a Christian and to think other blah blah blah, right? It's bait in order to get engagement versus, you know, a great example would be Ayn Rand and George Orwell, right? They didn't need to be hyperbolic. They didn't need to act like jackasses to get their message across. What did they do? They wrote phenomenal books, made phenomenal speeches that resonated with people. For them, it was all about the message and actually getting it in front of people and relaying it in a manner that folks could connect to and it could make an impact on them where they would want to go out and spread that message as well. But it wasn't about spreading just rage, right? Ayn Rand didn't create her books to just so folks would go out just spewing hate about communism or whatever. For them, it was about pushing optimism, pushing change, pushing individualism, a lot of the tenets that would actually help people, humanity, society. And, and like for George Orwell's case, right, trying to give people some foresight into what the future might hold, what society could look like if we don't counter certain things in society and in culture. That's what we need more of, right? How do we get back to actually professionally and, you know, being able to push a message and connect with an audience versus just riling them up, pissing them off, and having the focus be around just money and clout. But really, when you think of folks today, like how many people today are are like Ayn Rand, for example? I mean, you really can't think of too many, especially when it comes to politics and all that. And I don't think they would have held up very well in terms of viewership, getting readers, getting attention towards their message if they were in today's society. Because again, they were not trying to rile folks up. They were not trying to get people to hate things or whatnot. So it's really unfortunate. But if folks actually want to improve culture, they want to. I mean, they need to look towards what is the Eastern European countries doing? What are some of the Asian countries doing? What are their focus? What's their focus on? In order to preserve their cultures. Those are the things that we should try to emulate and take notice to, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to change the direction that our culture and country is going in. That's the only way you're going to change the mainstream is by doing it better, not focusing on like, well, how can I get the most sales, right? Well, maybe if I cater to this narrative or put in this type of character, or maybe I'll bend here or there, that's fine, right? I'll get more sales then, right? And then I can push more of my message. No, how about you put your money where your mouth is, or put your morals in your culture where your mouth is, and inject that and your message and your beliefs into your books and prove that you can make something better, make something impactful, just like Ayn Rand did, just like George Orwell did, right? Just like Tolkien did. Make something that stands out that can last decades and impact the future and the present, not how can I be an opportunist and get the most out of the moment, financially and attention. Folks, a lot of folks are too focused on clout and fame and not actually changing the culture, preserving art, or making beautiful art. And AI is kind of that litmus test to see like who actually respects and loves these mediums, who actually respects and loves art and storytelling. To me, if you're willing to take shortcuts and let a machine do the work for you, you might not, in my opinion, respect the medium all that well. You may not actually love it that much. Maybe you just love money more, which, you know, money can lead to many evils. And I think it can also twist and contort culture and society. And I think that is what's happening to America, unfortunately, and a lot of other Western nations as well. So let's see here. I think that about covers that topic. Oh yeah, I mean the other thing too, I kind of hinted at that, but wanted to dive into a little bit more is right whether it's I think inadvertently or even accidentally, these rage baiters are training people to only focus on the negative aspects of entertainment, so that when they see a film, they'll find a couple things that they don't like, but they'll hyper focus on it so much that they'll just say, "Oh, this is garbage. This is shit." Right? When the overarching story may have been really good, the acting may have been phenomenal, but they'll just throw the entire movie or book out just because of one or two aspects. They're not able to judge it as a whole, give it a proper assessment, and as a result, again, a lot of things are not getting the sales or funding that they should. So, all right, let's check it out in the chat. That was my weekly rant. All right, see, we have more ridiculous statements from Reply Guy, and yes, I say a joke, right? A reply guy. That's about as harsh as I'm going to get. But what to me is really sad is I have a in real life friend that is friends with Niobe, right? He's not CG. However, he has commissioned several CG artists for cover art and such, and it's like the some of the best art he's ever had tied to his books, and he's made some great relationships as a result. But again, he's able to right interact with, respect folks from different areas or corners of the indie space. And Niobe had seemed to be the same way for almost 2 years, and then all of a sudden that changed, right? The whole guilt by association and the whole, um, you know, claiming that people are in a cult and all that narrative came out. So, I think one thing that's happening is you do have folks that I think they're virtue signaling as a way to try to get into the mainstream, right? Like, hey, I hate that group. I'm one of the good ones. Yeah, I'll fit in right in with the mainstream. Like, if I can virtue signal enough, I could get attention of one of those virtue signalers in the mainstream. And what's funny is some of the folks they claim to be conservatives, but they're trying to virtue signal to get the attention of some liberals that are pushing things that go completely against what they claim their beliefs are to be. And I think that's why you'll see some ramp up of narratives and um, verbiage towards CG is simply like, "Hey, look at me! I'm fighting the good fight. I'm anti CG. I'm made for the mainstream. I got to get in the mainstream." Like, I don't know. Maybe is it because the crowdfunding isn't going as well as you'd hoped? And if you've been doing it for many, many years, why haven't you gotten the attention of the mainstream? I don't know, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to get hired or get into a company as a result of what I say, right? Whether that's pushing a message or virtue signaling, trying to cancel people, right? I would want to get into a company or get a break because my book was that amazing, because the characters were that intriguing. I want it to be based off of merit and quality, not things that I've said. So know. It's sad if folks are trying to get in the mainstream with such a method. Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of that happening, of course. CBS is guilty of all you just said and has been doing it for 8 years. Don't you think that's 7 years too long? Again, I'm not responsible for what he says or does. There's a lot of stuff that he says that I agree with. There are some things that he says that I don't agree with. And that's the other thing. Look, these agitators will claim that we're in a cult. We have a hive mind. Yet they don't realize that no human being agrees with another human being 100%. It's literally impossible. No one has the exact same beliefs and opinions than any other human being on this earth. Virtually impossible. If you're an adult, you should realize that. And I'll give you a great example. I'm wearing this shirt. Huge fan of the Snyderverse, right? I love Batman vs Superman. I love Man of Steel. All that. EBS does not. We have different opinions on movies. So what? I'm sure we could respectfully discuss the topic and walk away still liking each other. That's how it should be. But yeah, I don't agree with everything that anyone says. Or, no one's views are 100% aligned. That's nonsense. Now that's bait. That's a known troll and agitator who wants to get me to say something about either side so that they can say that I am attacking them or hating on them. So, not falling for that one. I'll simply say I'm not interested in any of them. Look at me, look at what I can do. He's like Stewart from Mad TV. Look at what I can do. Uh, okay. Let's see. Hey, you're a big deal in the mainstream, Larry. Why are you punching down? Uh, We have Benjamin Soto. Welcome. I think he still has an active campaign on my comics, so definitely go check that out. He also interviews folks as well, so gotta respect that. And we need more of that. Look at this bait, trying to dangle that hook out in front of me. Nope, not happening. My comic preserves the culture of cool comics. Chill. Yep, and definitely check out my stream from last week, the Dark Horse Discourse stream number 4. We went over Frost Comics' free comic, so definitely sub to his YouTube channel, go to his Twitter, and then yeah, get your hands on his free digital comic, which was really good. Yeah, yeah, and you'll see that too, like people that are shitting on Martin in order to create to get their own book sales, like they obsess over the fact that he hasn't finished his series. It's like, dude, just let the guy do what he wants. Like, are you that dependent on his book coming out in your life? I mean, okay, you didn't like the end of how the show, the end of the show or whatever, but it's like you should not be obsessing over whether or not he finishes his book or not. It has no impact on what you do. And yeah, we're seeing folks that are putting little comments in their published books about George R. R. Martin not finishing his book and all that. And it's like, really, you're just baiting people so you can get content. The guy can either finish his series or he doesn't. Like, it's up to him.